Our project, Reflection Future, seeks to design a tranquil space where different groups of living things can live together, expressing one of our ideas about utopia: coexistence. With this theme, we are creating a viable and sustainable environment where humans and animals can live together in our architecture, a community park. Utopia is one of our themes for the design. We are not creating something from our imagination and producing render drawings without context. Instead, it needs to illustrate the design's plot and links to reality, persuading people to believe our design responds to a task and creates a perfect utopia. Our project site is Heron Island, a coral cay located near the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern Great Barrier Reef, which has a luxury resort and a research station. The island is home to over 100,000 fishes, birds to breed, and turtles to lay eggs and hatch. Our design is mainly focusing on two aspects: the initiative to entertain the guests who visit the site, a community park providing information about the corals and their importance in the life cycle. Our architecture aims to generate an artificial habitat for land and sea creatures, which shows we are not invading the other creatures' territories, but proclaims we are looking for cooperation and coexistence. One of our inspirations is Euro Park, which has a reflected structure room to let visitors experience the change of life. We created a space with a similar format, but with a different theme. The area is trying to engage visitors to observe things from different perspectives. The ceiling has reflective material, so people can look up and discover the corals from the sea. This method will create an atmosphere like people are underwater without disturbing the sea's lives. It is implying the ocean's surface is the border between the land creatures and the sea creatures, maintaining the harmony of each group. Another idea is to create more interaction between our architecture and visitors. A well-thought-out circulation is important for our design, providing a balanced space where different species can live on the same land. We looked at different architectural topologies and were interested in Kuzhu Sports Park's landscape. The idea that function spaces were distributed in various locations on the site creates collaboration with nature, blending with it to become united. So we decided to develop extended circulation between spaces and create moments in the landscape where the different creatures can meet each other. Coral is also one of our key elements throughout the design process. First, we researched its characteristics and potential for our design. Then, we separated them into two groups: the branching structure and the defensive structure. The branching structure illustrates their desire to survive in nature, which is taking over the other corals' living space and creating competition for their species. On the other hand, the defensive corals provide shelter for other creatures and protect them away from their predators. These characters reminded us how to design a coral reef for them to live in our architecture, which we will talk about the outcome later. The next step is coral reef development. We determine the shape of the coral through the learned blender skills, which are shade smooth and displace skills. This could be the first step. In the second step, we attach different coral bodies to the reef through the particle system technology to restore underwater organisms' survival status. Then there is the simulation of the local underwater environment, mainly to obtain the best visual experience through sculpting and lighting test. We separate it into 3 stages for our project design: function space, floating surface, and coral reef. The inspiration for the function space is folious coral. The spiral growth patterns provide the potential to plan the room's function and create a single circulation in our building. And we got inspired by Mixihu International Culture and Arts Center, producing an organic facade to form a flexible vision of the space. Furthermore, considering the environment of biological growth, we have set folious coral pathways in the range leading to each functional space. The purpose is to simulate the symbiotic relationship between seaweed and coral reef at the bottom of the water and reflect it into the water space structure to increase the floating park's different sense of space experience. The floating surface is the main architecture that serves as a landscape and resource for wildlife, while providing friendly navigation to visitors. We used brain coral as our inspiration, tracing its shape and modifying it to create space for different species. Also, we adjust the platform with its surrounding context, which carving out individual habitable spaces reduces any elements of confinement and produce shelters for the wildlife that are unreachable by humans. As a result, those areas enable flora and fauna to be interjected into the architecture. Finally, the porosity of the structure conveys the sensitivity towards treating the site, mediating the imposing nature of architecture, while strengthening the connection to those who occupy the space. Next, in our coral reef space, we reflected the shape of the surface, recarving the area where we could distribute the space equally and supply multiple territories for the coral to habitat. We planned different regions for the coral to habitat in the coral reef space. One of the reasons is to reduce the competition of the coral surviving in the same area, which is one of our aims for our design. To protect the corals. Also, it can let sunlight shine on all surfaces of our coral reef, one of the essential elements that corals need for living. Although the coral reef is shied away from society as it is located under the sea, we were still trying to engage our architecture with the natural landscape. It will be pleasant for the visitors to see a beautiful landscape and relieve their stress alone, an isolated personal space. In conclusion, the project draws out the potential of utopian floating architecture and the idea of coexistence as it uses the architecture to shift the importance of use for the ecology. It engages wildlife not only for our amusement, but to speculate and prepare the wilderness as human civilization continues to expand, occupying lands that would potentially threaten the lives of this animal species. We hope you enjoy staying in the Reflection Future Community Park.